News, views, voices of the global Indian community. India abroad.
Shekhar, thank you. Thank you for that history and the quizzes and the knowledge that you gave us about Indian Americans and our civic engagement in this country, and for your warm introduction. So for everyone, my name is Aruna Miller. Let me restate that. Aruna Katragada Miller, Lieutenant Governor of Maryland. And I am so thrilled to be here. And, all of us wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the great work that is being done by In Diaspora. So, MR, thank you to you and your team for creating this great organization. Sanjeev, thank you for your leadership. Really appreciate it. And I have to tell you, I went and looked at your report, the first ever that talks about Indian Americans and their impact in the United States. And I got to tell you, I loved every bit of it, because I can't tell you how often I'm Googling things, right? So what percentage of Indian Americans are there, and how many are physicians and entrepreneurs and on the Forbes 500 list? You did it all. The only suggestion I would make in that report is you may want to introduce how many spelling bee champions we've had in this country, right? Since 2000, 28 out of the 34 have been Indian Americans. That's pretty remarkable. And every one of these young champions is going to go on to be entrepreneurs and physicians and Nobel Prize winners, you name it, philanthropists. So I'm really proud of their achievement as well. So a little bit about myself. In 2022, Maryland did something pretty historic. They elected the first Black governor ever in the state's history with Governor Wes Moore. And they elected the first Indian American immigrant woman ever elected as lieutenant governor. Now, what's pretty interesting about Governor Wes Moore and me, we became the first in the nation, the first gubernatorial ticket with two people of color ever to win in the history of the United States. So, look, I will say that isn't the assignment to be the first or to make history. The assignment is to make sure that we can level the playing field for everyone, right? The assignment is to make sure every person, young and old, when they walk into a room or a space, they know they belong there. They deserve to be there. That's really what we're all about. And since we've been elected, we are making sure that every face and every individual is seen and heard. In fact, when we created our cabinet, we created the most diverse cabinet in Maryland's history, where 50% of our cabinet secretaries are people of color and 50% are women. And we also have the highest amount of AAPI cabinet secretaries in the continental United States. So this is why representation matters, because we need to have our leaders at all different levels of public service, not just in elected office, but also serving the government. Because when immigrants come to this country, such as me, it's hard to navigate government, right? And it's hard to trust government when you don't see people that look like you there. That's why it's very important to have representation at all different levels. And I will say that, there's different reasons as to why people get into public service. And I want to share you my story of what interested me in public service. It was probably around 1977. My parents immigrated to this country in the 60s, and I was the last of my siblings to arrive in 1972. I was 7 years old. So in 1977, there was a big typhoon in Andhra Pradesh, from the state that I was from. And this particular typhoon killed like 10,000 people. And I remember how distressed my mom and dad were when they, heard about it in the news. My dad was making calls to India back then and trying to make sure that everyone was okay. And the next day, he came up to my sister and me and handed us an empty metal coffee can and said, go raise some money. I want you to go around the neighborhood and collect money for the people that are suffering in India. And needless to say, I'm like, 11, 12 years old. My, sister's a teenager, a little bit older than me. And we were like, Daddy, no one's gonna give us any money. Are you kidding? And we didn't want to do it. And my dad pulled us aside and he said, listen, never underestimate the kindness and generosity that people have. And still we were like hemming and hawing. We didn't want to do it, but reluctantly we went out that November Sunday morning. I'll never forget. And we didn't think anybody was going to give us money because we didn't have anything to show that that's what we were collecting money for. Nothing at all. Mind you, for the many of us that are older in this room, there was no such thing as the internet and iPhones to see if you were legit or not. So my sister and I started off on that day and started knocking on doors. With every door that we knocked on, people opened the doors. There were moms, again, back in the 70s, that were cooking and doing homework with their children, and fathers that were there watching football games with their friends, right? That's how the scenery was back then. Thank God it's changed since then. But every single person, and again, I want to remind you, these are 2 immigrant girls, young girls, in Missouri, walking around in the suburbs of St. Louis, and every single individual gave money. Never, ever hesitated. Like, who are you? And do I believe you? This is what America is. We often forget, because of the things we see on the news and the divisiveness that's taking place, that we're different. No, we're not. And it was exactly what my dad said. Never underestimate the kindness and generosity of others. By the time we finished knocking on those doors, that coffee can was filled, brimming over with change that people had given, change that would make a difference for people 8,000 miles away that they had never met. And it was a change that came to my life. I knew then and there that I wanted to serve, right? I wanted to give back to the community because my dad was right, and every single those individuals that gave money proved that I was wrong because I had doubted them. And so I wanted to give back in every way possible. So when I earned my degree in civil engineering, the first thing I did was get into public service because I knew that's what I wanted to do. And as a civil engineer, let me tell you, I was never prepared to run for public office whatsoever. And Shekhar, as you know, told a little bit about that story. But before I say a little bit more, I got a quiz that Shekhar didn't give, which is, do you know who the first elected statewide representative in the United States was? Not statewide, state elected official, I should say. Come on, Shekhar, you should know this one. MR?
Kumar.
Yes, Kumar Barve from the state of Maryland. He was the first one ever elected as a state representative in the United States. And so what happened is I ran for office as a delegate, and eventually I had the opportunity to run with Governor Westmore. And it has really been such a profound experience to represent the people of Maryland. And I cannot emphasize really how impactful that is to be able to really uplift people, to have the policies that really speak to people that are often forgotten and not represented, right? And so that's why our motto is to leave no one behind. This is not just a tagline. This is a value statement for Governor Westmore and myself. And we want to make sure that Indian Americans are represented as part of the fabric of everything that we create. And the governor understands just how important our voices are. Look, not only that I'm his partner in this administration, but he is also the son of immigrants, right? Of a Jamaican mom that came to this country. And of course, many of us here in this room are immigrants. And so I say that, in looking into the future, as Shekhar already gave you a little history of, America and how many people are in public service. Look, when I first ran as a delegate in 2010, there were 0 representatives at the federal level. And today we have 6. We have Vice President Kamala Harris, 5 congressmen and women. And from what I understand, that number could double, or it might get up to 9, from 5 to 9 in US Congress. At the state level, you know how many people are statewide across the nation besides myself? Can anybody? Another quiz for you, Shekhar. There's one other statewide representative across the nation, and that is Josh Call, Attorney General from Wisconsin. So there's 2 of us, right? And then as Shekhar mentioned, there's between 44 to 48 state elected officials. And we have one right here, Srinivasan, Representative Srinivasan, thank you for your service. So what I say to all of you is, I know that as Indian Americans, we've come to this great country and we benefited from it significantly. And Shekhar talked about how it is that it was the Civil Rights Act that really led to the Immigration Act of 1965. So we have a great deal of debt to owe to African Americans, to the Black, freedom fighters who fought for the Civil Rights Act. But when they did that, when you throw a bold, progressive idea into the world, like the Civil Rights Act, it has a ripple effect. And that ripple effect led to the Immigration Act of 1965. So every one of us owes a great deal of debt to the African Americans that made this possible. And you know what? Every one of them benefited from Gandhi, right? It was this peaceful civil disobedience that Martin Luther King was inspired by, and that's what they were inspired by. So everything goes around, right? It comes in full circle what's happening to every one of us. So I just want to say that I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the support of the Indian American community. Every single time I ran for office, even if there was no possibility of me winning, people like Shekhar immediately said, yes, tell me how much to write for you, right? And this helps so much because look, individuals don't get elected just on their own. They need your support. So I encourage you, when you have a representative that comes up to you, a candidate, please support them in every way you can, because that's how we can make a difference. If we can get people from our community elected, they'll be able to represent the unique issues and concerns that our community has. Look, we support, much like any other individual in our state or in this nation. We support education, environment, healthcare, you name it. But there's also very unique things that are related to our community, including immigration, right? That becomes a big part of it. And now we're beginning to see the rise in hate crimes for Asian Americans and other communities. So this is why our representation matters. And as Shekhar said, all politics is local. I know that we get very excited when it's a presidential election and we think, that's who's gonna make a difference. Of course, the president and the vice president make a difference, but the people who have the greatest impact on our life are your local elected officials. Policy making impacts our life from the moment we close our eyes till the moment we wake up. That's exactly it. When you get up and you drink that first, glass of water, is it contaminated? Is the water clean? Guess who determines what kind of funding is going to be set aside for that? Your local elected officials. When you send your kids to schools, are the schools, do they have all the resources your children need? Guess what? The Board of Education decides, the type of funding that goes into all this, or the policies that go into education. When you get on the roads and you drive, are the roads filled with potholes, or are you stuck in traffic? Your local elected officials are the ones who determine the funding for transportation. And so I can just go on and on about this, but this is why our engagement is so important at the local level. And so I want to thank every one of you for being here. I stand on your shoulders. all of you that have come here and made remarkable successes, whether it's in the areas of entrepreneurship or as business leaders or as educators or as elected officials. Thank you. Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for building such a wonderful community here. Thank you.